So, what if the discipline strategy you were told to use fails up to 50% of the time? And what if it's not just ineffective, but actually harmful for sensitive or neurodivergent kids? Hi, I'm Dr. Roseann. I'm here educating you about the nervous system so that we can help our kids be more regulated. And of course, that means they're going to learn, they're going to be more attentive, and ideally happier, right? And so let's talk about why traditional discipline, maybe stuff your parents taught you, maybe there's stuff that they're still trying to teach you about your kids. Why does it fail a lot? And in fact, research shows us that up to 85% of the time, parents admit to inconsistent use of our most common modern parenting techniques, which is timeouts. So, why do they fail? Why are people inconsistent? So, they're often used when kids are very emotionally overwhelmed and it feels like rejection for a kid. It doesn't feel safe. And I also feel like a lot of time it is a friction point between a parent and a child. I have lots to say about timeouts. I actually think adults need more timeouts. But what happens is there's nothing warm about that. There's no connection happening that makes your child feel safe for the learning to occur because when you're warm, you create safety and connection. The nervous system is regulating, right? And, I'm all about nervous system first parenting, right? This is not permissive parenting. This is really about how do we use the brain to help our kids learn to self regulate. And when self regulation happens, lots of amazing things happen. And even though we're really talking about neurodivergent kids, this is good parenting. This is how we should parent all of our kids, but it's essential for kids with neurodivergence, right? And so kids with neurodivergence, when they are more activated because they are prone to more activation, they're not always making the connection to why. And that can be a big reason why timeouts and other parenting, techniques don't work, right? And when we focus on just stopping the behavior, we're not really teaching kids about how to regulate, right? We're only showing them what they shouldn't do. I say this all the time. And so they're not as apt to make the connections. All kids, if we're constantly say, don't do this, stop, then there's not a lot of learning, right? And I know parents will say to me, well, their brother does or their sister does. There's a lot to say about that because the kid who's learning it through observation just isn't as dysregulated. Aha moment right there. So, right now, remember, again, this isn't about being soft. It's about getting regulation right because without regulation of the nervous system, none of that good learning is going to occur. We want our kids to learn in the moment today, but these micro moments of parenting really set them up for the future and being regulated, right? So, why do kids who are sensitive, who have neurodivergence, who have other issues, or just don't have issues, they're just more sensitive? Kids today are sensitive. That's not a bad thing. I know it does feel like it's a bad thing. It will serve them later if we harness it and we nurture it in the right way. So these kinds of kids are much more likely to have nervous systems that activate, as I mentioned earlier, right? And so when we punish these kids, right, we're in a punishment model, not a teaching model. They're just more likely to experience shame, shut down, or lead to increased escalation. Kids who are more sensitive, neurodivergent, have more difficulties transitioning, difficulties with emotional control, and also making a connection to their behavior and that consequence, right? And this is just a point of understanding. This does not mean we're not teaching, we're not showing them what to do, we're not permitting unsafe behaviors or out of control behaviors. This is us really saying, let's regulate first so they can learn, right? And rejection based strategies like timeout can really trigger sensory, social, almost traumatic responses for our kids, particularly our really sensitive kids, right? Who just want to do the right thing, but might be struggling with learning, right? And we always have to take a 360-degree view out and really think, why is my kid struggling to learn this? What actually works for the neurodivergent brain? Number one, co regulation. We're going to go into that, right? Calm adult, much more likely to have a calm kid. It's just the way it is. We all know it. And don't feel bad if you're not, perfect, because you really shouldn't be perfect. You just have to be 80% great, right? So, nervous system regulation and safety before teaching, right? Because remember, when our kids are struggling with everything from a transition to doing their homework or being nice to their sibling or not talking back to you or wanting the keys to your car and getting mad. These are all learning opportunities, and kids do dysregulate. But all kids dysregulate sometimes. It's just some kids are prone to more of that. And it's each one is an opportunity to help them learn. And some kids who are more sensitive or neurodivergent or have clinical issues, of course, they need more reinforcement, right? So, what actually works is connection and compassion. That's what leads to regulation because they can borrow our calm. We are their emotional anchor, right? And once calm, right? Don't go in hot. Don't go in when you're hot. Don't go in when they're hot. Once they are calm and regulate, you can guide, teach, and redirect. That's when all those great conversations happen. And, you really want to, reinforce what the behaviors you want to. Let's talk about the C and comms, right? So this is the critical step in helping our more sensitive kids, right? So you want to anchor in that moment, right? So if you are regulated, right? If you're not regulated, you've got to pause. There is no reason to go in and rescue, go in and try to support your kid, go in and try to teach if you're already hot. Take 30 seconds and pause, right? So you want to be that anchor of, what's your breath? What's your body language? What are you doing when you're there, right? Because if your kid is dysregulating, they really can borrow your calm and it will not just serve them in that moment, it actually builds internal self regulation over time. Everyone always wants to know how myself and actually my JC, my Giancarlo, why we are such great chefs. And I learned by watching my mom, and he learned by watching, and we did it together. It didn't just happen. You have to develop these skills, right? So it's the same with regulation, right? We want that C because you can't access reasoning skills, you can't access that frontal lobe when you're dysregulated until that brain feels safe enough, right? Now, kids don't have to be perfectly regulated, they just have to be regulated enough to get in there, right? And I really want you to have a parenting reframe because when we're doing nervous system first parenting, you're starting to see my kid's not being difficult, they're not being defiant, they're not being disrespectful, they're overwhelmed, they're dysregulated. And so when you pull back and you see it as that, you can say, I don't need harsher punishments. They need me to be calmer to help them regulate, right? And this is what strategic nervous system parenting is. And, people flying all over the world, all over the country to come and work with me. And yes, we do really cool things like neurofeedback and PEMF. But this is a lot of what we do in our program. It's actually reframing and talking about strategic nervous system parenting, right? So what is your next step, right? Because, it always feels hard when you're overwhelmed, when your kid is struggling, of course, right? But you can take micro steps. First is in the next moment of difficulty, whether it's your own or your child, you're going to pause, right? Take a breath. That's the quickest way to regulate yourself. And then ask yourself, my child regulated enough to understand what I'm going to talk to them about, right? If not, co-regulate, then guide and teach later, right? You can do, I always used to do dissections with my neurodivergent kids after they were regulated, was like, let's do a situational autopsy and see what happened in that moment. And it was pretty amazing. And because there's no shame, and it was like, oh, I'm trying to understand what happened. We can make this better, right? So discipline without regulation honestly is a missed opportunity. Like when something goes down, you have to say, oh, okay, this is an opportunity for me to teach and for my kids to learn. Doesn't negate that you're not, you're experiencing frustration and overwhelm, right? But for neurodivergent kids, for sensitive kids, calm is the consequence that works because their nervous system is so activated for so many reasons that I could go on and on and on about, but we need that. So, if you want weekly tips in your inbox from Dr. Rowe, you want to go to drroseann.com and sign up for Dysregulation Insider newsletter. And it's drroseann.com/newsletter. It's free. It's got great information. I promise you, people are reading it every week. 95% of people open it up. So it's that good. So don't get overwhelmed. Start thinking about parenting as strategic nervous system parenting. You got this.
More insights and solutions, well, subscribe to our Dysregulation Insider and it will show up in your inbox every week.